Hello, my friends. Here I am again, 7 weeks in a row with our weekly open classes in Karate Science Academy's YouTube. I'm Pedro Candeias, the founder of Karate Science Academy. I'm from Portugal. That's why my accent is not really perfect, but I think it's improving, and I hope it's truly understandable by all of you. Well, before I go to this week class, I'm going to apologize. I apologize because yesterday, Wednesday, is the day I fixed to publish the new class. Okay, but I had this class recorded in the three languages, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But at the end, when I go to publish it on YouTube, I realized that the sound was not recorded. So I'm recording everything today again on Thursday. So sorry for the late, but here I am as always in the last 7 weeks. Okay. And before I go directly to the theme that I bring you this week, I want to warn you that in the next week, okay, January 27, I'm not going to publish a new class because I'm preparing a very special online event with me, okay, where I'm going to teach, to give, to share four master classes where I'm going to teach literally everything evidence knows about a specific training method for speed and power adapted to karate. Okay, it's going to happen between 1 and 8 February. So I have 11 days to prepare the event. At the beginning, I was supposed to launch it only in English, but then I realized that all the karatekas from Spanish and Portuguese language countries also deserve to have access to the same event at the same time. So I have I'm plenty of work to do in the next 11 days, so I can't share a new class next Wednesday. But when that special event ends, I return to this regular class in Karate Science Academy's YouTube. Okay, don't miss that special online event. I truly believe you are going to be overwhelmed with the information I'm going to share with you. It's a method, the most versatile method you can use to develop power and speed. I'm not saying it's better than others, but it's the most versatile. So if you are at home in a lockdown, if you are at the gym, if you still go to the dojo to teach your athletes, to train your athletes, you can use this method everywhere. Okay, with kids, with advanced athletes, kumite, kata, regardless of the goal your karatekas may have. So don't miss it. I'm going to take you into an amazing world of knowledge, of factual knowledge, of evidence-based knowledge, with very practical information. The number of reps, the number of sets, the time of rest between sets, how many times per week you should apply it, the technical execution, the safety considerations you have to consider when you go to apply you're going to apply that method with kids, for example. I'm really going to give you everything for free. Is an offer I believe I must give in this difficult period we are living right now all over the world. So it's a free week. It's like an entire course about that training method. And next Saturday, okay, January 22, I'm going to announce on our Instagram and Telegram channel. The links are here below in the description, where you can register for making part to make part of this special online event. Okay. So let's go to the subject that brought you here, okay? And the title is very elucidative, okay? Stop reacting to lights, balls, or any other non-specific stimuli for karate. Okay. I hope that you at the end of this class you realize why it's not a good strategy, it's not a good method, and it's not a question of not being as good as reacting to real kumite techniques. It doesn't work. Okay, evidence is very clear about this issue. This is a well-studied issue in the sports science community. Okay, inside sports science community, and the results are very clear in every context that they apply some kind of research to trying to understand how reaction works, what's the best strategy to develop reaction decision making skills in several types of athletes and also outside the sports world. Okay. um, First of all, I'm not saying that you can't use those fancy light systems to react to green or red lights, okay, or to react to make an evasion against a ball, for example, a tennis ball or a ping pong ball. You can use that kind of exercise or materials, for example, to develop stamina or endurance in a more dynamic way, to increase the levels of motivation, making a break in the regular kumite training. You can use those kind of non-specific stimuli with kids up to 8 years old, for example, where you don't have as a priority to develop their kumite skills. The priority is to develop them in terms of motricity, cognitive processes, keep them motivated with karate classes. But when you decide what you're going to use to develop your kumite athletes' reaction skills, decision making skills, that's not a good choice. It's an example that where technology doesn't add anything to what we traditionally do make in karate training. Okay, our senseis, our masters, always taught us. Okay, reacting against punches, kicks, moves. Okay, along the tatami, and that's the correct way of doing things. Evidence, fortunately, evidence filters what really is effective and useful from more traditional methods of training that come from dozens of years ago, and what's not that good. Okay, in this case, what we do in karate for 100 years is the best way of doing things. Okay, um, so stop spending money in fancy equipment that doesn't bring anything to your kumite athletes. Okay, so uh, let's see. I'm going to talk here about several elements that will show you how our brain works, how our reaction skills how our decision-making skills work, so you can understand deeply why it's not a good choice to use non-specific stimuli to develop your kumite athletes. Okay, first of all, let's define what decision making skills are. Okay, many times I'm talking about this with other karate coaches or athletes, And many times I hear this from some of them. No, it's impossible to make decisions during a fight because everything happens very fast. Yes, it's true. Everything is very fast in a fight, but the understanding they have about decision making skills is wrong. I'm not talking about making a decision of what I'm going to buy in the supermarket tomorrow. Okay, that can be a very conscious decision. I plan my buying list. Okay, but in a fight, in a situation where we have to react very, very fast, our brain works automatically. Okay, it makes decisions in a subconscious level. Okay, that makes possible to defend a very fast attack that someone makes towards me. Okay, so decision making skills is not just about conscious and rational decisions. It's also about automatic and subconscious decisions that we have to make in a very random and very fast and very chaotic situation as a fight. Okay, when I'm talking about fighting, yes, I my communication is um, most of it directed towards WKF athletes and coaches. But what I talk in this class and almost every classes is transversal to self-defense, to a full contact karate. If you're training a karateka to go to the octagon fighting in MMA competitions, the principles are the same. If you are trying to develop the skills of an athlete of yours that is going to fight in karate combat, the principles are exactly the same. Okay, it doesn't matter the type of kumite we are talking about, kyokushinkai, the same thing. Of course, there are some specificities uh, uh, in terms of certain techniques, distance, because when you punch with full impact, there is some difference against someone who will break the movement. Okay, but in terms of decision making, is exactly the same thing. Okay, so let's start seeing the several elements. I'm going to talk first about anticipation. Okay, I'm not talking about the anticipation that we use in karate. When my opponent starts an attack, I go after, but I can reach him um, um, earlier. Okay, and then I score the point. Okay, that's not the kind of anticipation I'm talking about. Okay, the anticipation is an element, a process that the process that makes part of decision making skills, and is the ability to recognize the opponent's action or attack in this case, or movement, before anything really happens, before the punch starts, for example. Okay, is this possible? Yes. I'm going to give you an example. Um, a Gyakutsuki from an advanced karateka may may be only 100 to 400 milliseconds. Is an absurd speed. Okay, and studies show that a block, since the attack starts until we make the block, can take a minimum of 600 more or less milliseconds. Okay, so that that would suggest that was impossible to defend a Gyakuzuki, and that's not true. We know that we can, with the correct training, with the right amount of hours. Okay, we are able to defend the Gyakuzuki, a very fast Gyakuzuki, to defend or avoid or else. Okay, even anticipate that Gyakuzuki. So how is that possible? It's possible because our brain starts to collect some information right before the technique starts, the attack starts. Okay, the posture, the movement, the facial expression, the tension that the opponent might gain before an attack, the movement is used to make before a given attack. Okay, and that is all information that the athlete must learn to process so he can start his reaction, his defensive movement right before the attack starts. Okay, let's see now stress and emotions. Two things about this. First, talking about your athletes, you have to develop a training plan that helps him or her to reduce what's called decision making stress. Let me give you an example. If your athlete needs to react against, if he knows that the opponent only can only execute Shodan Kizamizuki with this front hand, and nothing more, the decision-making stress is going to be much lower compared to a situation where the opponent can execute kicks, punches with the front leg, front hand, rear hand. Yokogeri, Mawashigeri, Ushirura Mawashigeri, Ushirugeri, Yokogeri, for example. Ashibarai, for example. Throw, Kizamitsuki, Yakutsuki, Uraken, Jodan, Shudan. Okay? He can move forwards, backwards, to the side, diagonally. He can be still. Okay? This is a bunch of information that will cause and increase the decision-making stress your athlete has to deal with in a fight inside the tatami. Okay, so we have progressively start to help our athletes to deal and reduce this decision-making stress, taking them to a greater emotional control. Okay, that will help them to make better decisions and faster decisions. Okay. Now, in the other side of this issue, we have our opponent's emotional changes. Okay, it's a very important source of information when we perceive, even subconsciously, that my opponent gets more nervous, gets more tense, changes his or her facial expression before making a certain movement. Okay, and this is all information that's only possible training and reacting and making decisions against a real person that is making real and specific kumite actions. Okay, of course, specific kumite actions depends once again from the type of fighting we are talking about. Okay, if we are talking about WKF kumite, it has a certain context, certain rules and techniques that are allowed or not. Okay, if I'm preparing a karateka to karate combat or MMA, is going to react against hooks, against uppercuts, against throws through the legs, for example, and we have to make them to decide against situations like that. Okay, like those ones. So this is all specific, but the principles again are the same. Then we have a cognitive process called inhibitory control. And what is it? Is what is once again another element of the decision-making skills. That is the ability your athletes may have to control or cancel inadequate actions and or reactions against the opponent's moves or techniques. Okay, let me give you two examples. For example, you have an opponent that is always trying to invite your athlete to go in, to attack, so we can make anything. Okay, it doesn't matter. The inhibitory control your athletes develop will help them first to control the impulse to follow in that trap. Okay, or let's imagine your athlete first in the first moment decides to go, is going or she's going to fall into the trap, but in the right moment your athlete cancels what is or her she's going to do. Okay, not exposing them completely to the action, to the opponent's action. Okay, and we must develop that skill, develop the skill of going or not to go, or not going, the skill of deciding subconsciously if I go or not go, if I defend or not defend, if I attack or not attack, or don't attack, if I move forward or backwards. We are always in this analysis, this cognitive process during a fight, and this is very, very important to develop, so you can have very effective and good kumite athletes and students inside your dojo. Okay, so this is the first part. I'm going to talk about 4 more elements, but right here, are you understanding right now why reacting to lights or balls or something like that is not effective? It lacks a bunch, tons of information, of vital information, so your athletes may react to specific attacks that will happen in kumite. Attacks or defensive strategies or moves in the tatami. Okay, everything the opponent does. Okay, next. Oh, I identified their mistake. Visual scanning, not visual scannings. Okay, visual scanning is no more than how your athletes observe their opponent's moves, attacks, decisions, what else, emotions. Okay, but I'm going to give you a practical example of so you can understand better the importance of this. I'm going to share with you in the Telegram channel 3 studies made specific with karatekas, with karate athletes or beginners or regular students. Okay, it's important that you start go deeper in what really is science. Okay, human movement, sports, karate, combat sports science. I'm not going to share the whole article. I'm going to share with you a summary of the most important information that's inside of them, of it, those 3 studies. But one of those studies compared, try to understand why elite kumite athletes are much better reacting to the opponent's moves compared to beginner karatekas. Okay, and one of the variables they studied was the visual scanning. What's the difference between the visual scanning between these 2 groups, kumite elite athletes or regular karatekas that are 1 year have just 1 year of experience, for example? Okay, the elite athletes observed, focused their attention mainly in the central part of the opponent, chest and face and head. Okay, while the beginners focused mostly in the what they understood as the main danger hands and feet, okay? Because they understand that the danger is the punch, the kick, so they focus their attention in the hands and in the opponent's feet. Why the elite Kumite athletes focus mainly in the central part of the opponent's body? Because it allows them to anticipate several small movements, small changes right before the punch is made or the kick is made, okay? Some shift in the trunk, some movement in the shoulders, some change in the facial expression, in the tension, okay? So in through the peripheral vision, they also collect information from the hands, the feet, the position inside the tatami, the distance, okay? But they mainly focus in the center of the opponent's body, okay? And that's one of the biggest difference we can find between elite athletes and beginning karatekas, okay? Now, deceptive actions, feints, simulations, and other type of deceptive actions. We all know that an athlete, a fighter that is really good in deceptive actions gains a huge advantage, okay, over his or her opponent. But the contrary is also true. You have to develop. You have to develop in your athletes the ability to not react against feints or simulations. What we talked about, inhibitory control, for example, okay? They have to be able to not fall in the trap of feints and simulations. That athlete that remains very quiet against the simulation, okay? That's very important because the defense is more solid if we don't get opened through feints, simulations, and other deceptive actions. How can we replicate this against tennis balls, against ping pong balls, against some type of device that goes in this way, from floating devices, from swimming that we see a lot in videos around the Instagram, for example, okay? It's not possible. It lacks a ton of information that is very important to not go to develop the inhibitory control, to decide when to go, when not to go, to anticipate the opponent's movement, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. Last but not least, pattern recognition. One of the most important elements of decision-making skills, and that is going to reinforce even more this issue of using non-specific stimuli for kumite. It's no more than using the information from similar previous situations that your athlete dealt with in the training sessions, in past competitions, okay? And it's going to be very, very important information to have a better and faster decision in the next fight, okay? You have to expose your athletes to the greatest to a lot of different situations, specific situations they're going to find or they may find during a kumite fight, a kumite bout, okay? It's very important that you stimulate your athletes to train with different partners, because all of them have some individual characteristics, and as much patterns you put in front of your athletes, they will develop a better and a wider recognition of several situations that may happen in the next fight. Okay, if I see a lot, if I fight a lot, for example, with athletes that have a right guard, for example, that's not as usual. Okay, I'm going to be better fighting against an athlete that uses a right guard. Okay, if I'm used to train a lot with athletes that use their front leg, most of the times I'm going to be better reacting to that kind of strategy, of techniques. Okay, so this is transversal to all we can think about kumite. So how do you develop this pattern recognition in your kumite athletes if they spend lots of time reacting to lights, to ping pong balls, to generic gestures, okay, to attack this hand, that hand? It may have uh, its role, but truly it's not highly effective to develop your kumite skills, your athletes kumite skills. Okay, for example, another situation that we can where we can find pattern recognition, for example, elite athletes from karate and any other sports develop the habit to analyze and watch their opponents videos and fights. Why? Pattern recognition. If they know in advance what are the main strategies of those opponents, what are the main techniques they use, what are the main tactics they use, your athletes develop the ability to react better and faster in the next fight they have with those opponents. Okay, this is obvious. So um, uh, how can we replicate this against non-specific stimuli? It's impossible. Okay, and that's why if your opponent suddenly changes completely his way of fighting compared to what you saw in the videos, what happens? Decision making gets much harder to um, to be successful. Okay, it just, if we think a little bit about these kind of things, we are going to go deep again into the vital principles of what really take us to a top level in fighting, for example, and not wasting time reacting against lights and some kinds of stuff like that. Okay, it's not because a top level athlete or coach uses this kind of stimulus that it's going to be good. Okay, because they may use that because they believe technology is better than everything, because the athlete is bored and they have to increase their training dynamics, and they buy a toy to make them happier. Okay, because I don't know, but it doesn't work. Okay, listen, I'm a person that I don't make judgments, personal judgments about things, about the training methods. I just want answers. Okay, my head is always full of questions, full of doubts. I don't have any interest of defending this or this or this or this. It doesn't matter for me. Okay, I just want the best answer I can find to give the best to my karate athletes, to other athletes I have in my gym, to regular people that come to my gym to solve some sort of health issue or to recover from a surgery. I really don't want, I don't care about what the source. It's not, I don't care, I don't defend anything in particular. I just want facts, I just want evidence, I don't want personal opinions, I don't want personal experiences. That is important in some things that it's not possible to study because, for example, committee strategies, committee tactics, okay, strategies, okay. It's not a question, it's not a matter of science, okay. Um, you develop a strategy, it works until the opponents start to recognize that strategy. Then you have to change it because they are used to it. They will eliminate, annul, cancel, stop that strategy. That's a very subjective matter, okay? And that's, of course, the experience of a top level committee athlete or coach is very important. But decision making skills, training methodology, strength and conditioning, kids training, flexibility, there are facts, there is evidence, there is robust evidence, reliable evidence that shows us that the path must be that and not this. Okay. And then when we have a certain theme where there is no answers yet, okay, the personal opinion experience is the best we can have in our hands, but then it comes a bunch of research that will show us if we were in the right path or if we must change or if we must just make a little adaptation, okay, and that's it. Okay, so technical adaptation. In summary, everything goes there. Okay, technical adaptation. The athlete that adapts better to the tactical and technical situations that occur during a fight is going to win. Okay, that's it. Now I'm going to show you four very fast brief videos I found on Instagram of good examples of decision making exercise. But let's talk of several situations here that will reinforce what we are talking about here. First of all, in summary, lights no, ping pong balls no, the voice, your voice depends, okay? Specific stimuli always, specific attacks, feints, defenses, moves for kumite, okay? I'm going to give you three examples that I think will reinforce what we are talking about here, okay? First of all, a study got two groups of people, volleyball players and track and field sprinters. Yes, 100 meters, yes. They are both groups of athletes that must develop a very fast reaction speed, but against different stimuli, okay? The sprinter has to react to a shot, okay, to a gunshot, a noise, a sound, no noise, a sound, okay? So he can start running as fast as possible. The volleyball players must develop a very fast reaction against, for example, a shot over the net where they have to jump and block that shot, okay? So we are talking about two different types of athletes that have really fast reaction skills. What they did, the researchers, was change the stimulus of each group of athletes. They put the volleyball athletes reacting to a shot, a gunshot, the sound, and the sprinters reacting to a shot, a ball shot over the net. Surprise, the results were very bad when the stimulus changed. Okay, let's see one thing that is very important. Why do we rely on generic, non-specific stimuli to develop our reaction skills? Because we believe that reaction speed is generic. If I'm fast reacting against a certain stimulus, that will automatically transfer to all the situations I have to react against, okay? And that's not how our brain works, our decision making process works. I might be very good reacting to a given stimulus, a certain type of stimulus, and be very, very bad reacting to other types of stimulus. Okay, don't forget this. This is the key point. The reaction skills are not universal, are not generic, are not transferred to all the situations we are exposed on. Okay. Um, Another example that was replicated with several sports, but I'm going to talk about table tennis. Okay. A group of researchers grabbed two groups of people: tennis table elite players and regular people that don't even make sports, don't have jobs where reacting to random stimuli is um, is uh, is present. Okay, and let's see if the reaction speed of elite table tennis players will transfer to generic stimulus. Okay, a generic stimulus. So what they made was they put the regular people and the tennis table players reacting to squares in a computer. Okay, they had to react fast and also with accuracy, because as we know in kumite is the same thing. It doesn't matter if I'm very fast reacting if the reaction is wrong. If I perceive that a punch is coming but the punch is Jordan and I block it shouldn't, it's a wrong choice. I reacted in the right time but with the wrong tool, the wrong technique. Okay, and surprise, surprise, the results were similar between both groups. The table tennis players that are used to react to a very fast stimulus, that is the ball that comes very fast, so they have to, yes, um, and they weren't faster or more accurate than the regular people that were sedentary, that didn't make any sport, that didn't work in a job where they had a demand of reacting to something random. Okay, so but when they put those same groups reacting to a ping pong ball, surprise, surprise, the tennis players were, I don't have to say, okay, hugely better than the regular people. Okay, another example: soccer, football. I like to talk about football whenever I can because everyone understands the sport. Let's think about the goalkeeper that has to react to a penalty. And research is curious that of all types of athletes, the goalkeeper from football, handball, or anything is one of the most studied players in in sports regarding reaction speed, reaction accuracy. So in football, even more because it's one of the sports that has more research, specific research about it. Okay, so one of the things they observed was the visual scanning, and the results were exactly the same as the Kumite elite athletes I talked about um, earlier in this class. So what happens? The goalkeeper, the best goalkeepers, those who are more successful defending the penalty, they look, they center, they focus their eyes, especially in the center of the player's body, chest, hips. Okay, because it's there where they can gather and very important information to anticipate, to make the decision of going or not going, the pattern recognition. They will start seeing that the angle of the kick, okay, will be this and not this. the power that the player is putting on the shot, the foot that is going to kick the ball. So this is all information that the goalkeeper is gathering to react to the penalty kick. They don't look to the feet, to the foot, or to the feet, to the legs. They don't look to the ball. They look to the center of the body of the player. Okay, and they are in greater disadvantage compared to us in Kumite because, as you know, the goalkeeper can't move before the ball starts, okay, coming towards the net, okay. So many of the information, but even there, the goalkeeper doesn't rely only in the ball because it was impossible. They try to use the information they gather immediately before the kick starts to increase the possibilities, the chance of success. In Kumite, we can immediately react to any kind of information we see, and it's easier than in the goalkeeper case. Let's see the last slide before the videos. Some practical recommendations that you can use immediately tomorrow in the next Kumite training session. Please create open exercises, of course, with a progression in terms of difficulty level that always includes some sort of decision making, offensive or defensive. Okay, most of the times I see this mistake in kumite training, in karate training. uh, Curiously, in competitive environments, the mistake starts to be less and less usual because competition brings a positive thing, that is the evolution of training methodology. Because if everyone is running after the method that may give them an advantage against the opponents, okay. But especially in non-competitive karate sessions, dojos, not all, but in most of them, the coaches, the senseis, the instructors go from completely closed exercises as kata, bunkai, kion, ippon kumite, predetermined fighting situations where both partners know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. They know the reaction that the opponent is going to, the partner is going to make, and then they hope that that is a good transfer, has a good transfer to a fully open fight, and that's not true. Okay, we must have stages between that. We must have semi-open exercises and stages between the closed exercises and the 100% free fight. Okay, it's the same thing we make in kata. We don't just get in the dojo and teach the most advanced kata to our beginner karatekas, right? We teach kion, we teach the basic kata, we teach the intermediate kata, we teach the advanced kata. Kumite is the same thing. A free fight is a very complex situation, okay? Is a very complex task to be successful on. So we must take our students, our athletes, in a progressive training process until they are able to be effective in a completely open fight. WKF, Kumite, Kyokushinkai, self-defense in the streets, whatever. Okay? I'm going to give you some examples, are just examples that you can grab and play with them. Okay? We have, for example, the temporal stimulus, where your athletes know what technique the partner is going to do, but they don't know when it comes. Okay, the moment the attack is going to be made, for example. Another situation, the spatial stimulus, is when your athletes know when the attack is going to start. For example, in these semi-open exercises, you can use your voice, for example, saying Ajime to the attack occur. So your athletes know when the attack is going to happen, but they don't know, for example, which attack is going to be, or the target of that attack, for example. Okay, and then we have the universal stimulus with an additional add L, where all the elements are random. Your athletes really don't know what's going to happen, and that's called a free fight. Okay, but don't go from completely closed exercises to the universal stimulus, because it's going um, to it's not going to help your athletes to evolve in a progressive and more effective way. Okay, so let's see here some examples on Karate Science Academy's Instagram. For example, here you have a young girl making kicks, okay, against a real partner that goes forward, backwards. She has to control the right distance, the right timing to attack. It's not a completely specific stimulus, because the partner is not in a specific kumite guard, but it's a good example of a semi-open exercise to progress in kumite. Okay, we have here another example here. Here, this exercise, the athlete, for example, this is a conditioned exercise for sure, because they don't make kicks, for example. So you don't have a completely universal stimulus, but the athlete must react to real people that just move the attack. Okay, and he has to make decisions against those situations that occur and are made by his partners. Then we have here another one. For example, this athlete has four partners. Two of them stay still. One of them attacks, and the last one, makes some simulations, some feints. And this is a very highly specific training stimulus for kumite. Okay, not being a completely open fight, but is really is an excellent specific stimulus. Okay, and last we have this one more stage, okay, to train the displacement inside the tatami, to be able to keep the distance. Okay, we have a partner that is a real person. She has the protection gear. All of this is information that your athletes brain is processing, okay, and recognizing. Yes, and then another level could be the partner being in a specific kumite stance, making specific kumite displacements. Okay, so I think you understood the idea, the central idea of this class. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's useful to help you to get your kumite training to the next level. If you are thinking about spending money in light system, it's a choice. If you are full of money, great, okay. But if you still have pads to buy, heavy bags, rubber bands, jump boxes, please invest your money in those kinds of things, because they will be very useful to develop your athletes' technical, tactical, and physical skills. Lights are not a good investment. Tennis balls are cheaper, but just for a game. Okay? To relax your athletes' minds. Okay? So don't forget the event, the special online event we are going to have between 1 and 8 of February, okay? Where I'm going to teach you everything, literally everything Evidence really knows about it. And you are going to be able to, the next week, after February 8th to use it in your training sessions or your Karateka's training sessions. Okay, I'm not joking. You are going to be really surprised with what I'm going to deliver you, and so don't miss it. This Saturday, January 22, I'm going to announce how can you register to make part of that free event. Okay, don't forget to subscribe our channel with the notifications activated, because when I return to the weekly open classes, as you know, if you follow these classes from the beginning, most of the classes are going to be eliminated from the channel when I publish a new one. So don't lose these classes. Help me to share it. We are thousands, millions of karatekas all over the world, thousands of trainers that just want to give the best to their students, athletes or not. And we all deserve to get this information that most of the times is locked in huge scientific online data database. Okay, and it's a waste of knowledge that is not getting in the it's not arriving to the dojos from all over the world. Okay, my classes are in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, so we mostly we almost reach everyone. Okay, so help me share this. Don't forget Instagram, Telegram. I'm going to announce when the special online event, what it's going to be, and how can you register for it. Okay, thank you very much for being there. See you on February 1. Okay, cheers, my friends.